Genetic modification is an important aspect of the food industry. The process of genetic modification itself is when specific genes from an organism have been replicated or have been replaced with genes from a different organism. There are different methods to genetically modify an organism. One of these is the vector method. This is when the products are inserted directly into the genome using a viral vector. Another method is known as the plasmid method. This method is used more often to alter microorganisms, such as bacteria. The last possible method for genetic modification is known as the bialistic method, which is used mostly for genetically engineering plants. The process for this technique is as follows. Pellets of metal coated with the desired DNA are fired at plant cells. The cells that take up the DNA are allowed to grow into new plants. This technique has proven to be quite effective in genetically modifying plants, such as maize. Genetic engineering is known to have many benefits, some of these being in the medical and agricultural field. One prominent benefit in the medical field is known as gene therapy, which is the medical treatment of a disease where defective genes are replaced or repaired, or therapeutic genes are introduced to be able to fight the disease. In the agricultural field, crops have been genetically modified to be able to withstand drought and viruses. One of the cons of genetic modification is that many people would argue that it is not safe. There is also said to be too much risk involved. Also, many people seem to be saying they do not know the long-term effects of genetically modifying an organism, and that is all too risky. Some people seem to believe it is also not morally ethical. A crop that has been genetically modified and has had an important impact on the world is maize. Considering that the world's population is expected to double by 2050, food availability has become a much more important social issue. Crops have been genetically modified so that there can be more productivity and less cost of production. Genetically modified maize is one of these crops. It was first grown in the US and Canada in 1997. Now, around 80% of the maize produced in the US is genetically modified, and there are 35 million hectares of genetically modified maize in the world. Also, many countries in North and South America, Africa, and Asia grow genetically modified maize. Maize accounts for 15 through 20% of the total daily calories in the diets of people of more than 20 developing countries, most of which are located mainly in Latin America and Africa. 68% of the land devoted to maize is found in the developing world, but only 46% of the production occurs there. Maize is a crop that has a huge impact on the food industry worldwide, not just in developing countries. The biggest traits that genetically modified maize has are that it is herbicide resistant and more insect resistant, along with being able to withstand tougher climate conditions, which has a huge effect on developing countries and their production of maize. Yet, one of the cons of genetically modifying maize is that the long-term effects are not known. Over time, the genetically modified maize could become immune to certain chemicals. Also, genetically modified maize affects all the organisms that consume or live off of it. This would include humans, animals, insects, and also bacteria. Lastly, the nutritional value of maize could be lessened, which would greatly affect the lives of people living in developing countries. Some advantages are that maize being genetically modified would lead to developing countries losing fewer crops due to harsh weather or disease, since the maize has been genetically modified to be able to withstand those problems. Another advantage of genetically modified maize is that there is very little to no change in the agricultural practices used by farmers to grow these crops. This means farmers in developing countries do not have to alter how they grow their maize. All these advantages mean more food for people in developing countries and also a more sustainable crop.